Hello everybody, thank you for joining this brief video, this short seminar today. Can I welcome you to Flow. So Flow is a family learning organisation. My name is Kate O'Hanlon and I work alongside Colette and Liz to provide so far Zoom online seminars and webinars for parents and teachers and anyone interested in what we're doing. Here are our contact details if anyone wants to email or find us further details of what we're doing on Facebook and Twitter. We have put together a series of short videos for online usage and 3 each, and you'll catch them all over the next 3 weeks. These are 3 dates: 25th of May, 1st of June, 8th of June. The details of these will all appear on Facebook and Twitter in due course. My session today is looking at the baby brain, and I want to separate fact from fiction when we look at information about the brain of the baby and the young child. And so what I've done is I've put together 15 questions. What do we know about the brains of babies and young children? And each question or statement can be responded to by saying, well, that's fact or it's fiction. And I want you to test yourself to see how much you think you do know, or how much do you know about the brain of babies and young children. So my first statement is, the brain is the last organ of the body to develop in the unborn child. Is that fact or fiction? And of course it is fiction, because the brain is the first organ to develop in the fetus. It appears in the fetus 5 weeks after conception. So it's quite an interesting fact that. The brain will develop in the young child according to its genetic blueprint. Fact or fiction? And of course this is another fiction. There is a genetic blueprint, which we all have in our genes, of course, but the brain is not solely dependent on that. As we will see, it is much more dependent on its nurturing and on its environment, and especially the environment it experiences. In the first years, 0 to 5 probably are the most significant stages for brain development in the whole life of the human being, 0 to 5 years. Number 3, parents and carers should ignore baby crying in order to train the child to self-regulate. Is that fact or fiction? And that's of course fiction. We shouldn't ignore any noises the child makes, whether that be cooing or laughing or crying. All of it means something, and the child needs something, and we should really be responding to that noise that he's making. They say one of the best things you can do at night when a baby is insisting on crying, even though you've fed him and watered him and looked after all his needs, is to sing to the child. And apparently singing to that young brain really has a dramatic effect. Self-regulate is something the child can do in very early stages, 0 to 2, 0 to 3 years of age. Everyday experiences will help create brain connections in the early years. Fact or fiction? And I'm sure everybody would agree that is a fact. They are entirely important, vitally important. Things like singing to him, talking to the child, any motor movements we can have with him, making his arms and legs move and all that kind of thing. All of these experiences, the cuddling, the caring, the loving, are vital for general development and especially for brain development. What about this one? Babies under 2 years of age can be taught to read. Fact or fiction? This is fiction. Children up to the age of 2 can be taught to memorize words and to do pretend read of a book, but they cannot be taught to read, as it were, because their brains aren't big enough yet, they aren't well enough connected yet for the child to make those connections between words in order to make meaning. So no, they can't be taught to read before 2. Learning to read is as natural as learning to talk. Fact or fiction? Fiction. Learning to talk is a natural process in the brain and has its own pathway. So we do learn to speak that first language that we're exposed to. But learning to read is not a natural process for the brain, and needs to be taught, and it needs to be taught at a certain stage when the brain is ready for that experience of reading. This one, babies have memory, fact or fiction? This one is fact. Babies do have memory, and we know that babies, very, very young babies under the age of 12 months, will remember faces, voices, songs, experiences that they had. Babies quite clearly have memory, and the more we give them, as it were, as experience, the more that also enhances the development of that centre of the brain. Number 8, young children can learn to speak 2 languages at the same time. Fact or fiction? This one is fact. Yes, we can. If the child is hearing them and experiencing them, he will learn to speak both languages, not learn to read them. That will be later on. But he can speak both and not confuse them, interestingly. And the earlier you do that in the language brain, the better. Number 9, babies do not need to crawl before walking. Is that fact or fiction? Now that's an interesting question. It's really fiction. Babies should be encouraged to crawl, or at least do the bum shuffle or something on the ground before they walk. It's very good for coordinating 2 sides of the brain, for making more connections happen and so on. And also it drives out the primary reflexes in the brain and allows the secondary reflexes to come in. Nursery rhymes are now considered to be old-fashioned and irrelevant in today's world. Fact or fiction? Completely not true. Nursery rhymes, singing, rhyming, stories, anything like that are absolutely essential to the brain in the early stages in order to prepare him for reading, because nursery rhymes are developing phonological awareness in the brain, of course, that knowledge or understanding of sounds and how sounds are connected to each other or dissimilar one from the other. So nursery rhymes and anything like that are very, very important for the young child. When children are beginning to babble and use baby talk, adults should echo them. Fact or fiction? And this, of course, is fiction. When the baby's beginning to babble and he's doing the ba ba ga ga da da sounds, which of course we will model for him and encourage him to make those consonant vowel sounds. But as he begins then to move it into 2-word sentences and that baby talk thing, adults should model the correct way of saying that, not model or echo the baby talk. That is not helping the child to learn. And that's linked to this one then, parentese. Speaking to children in a slow, sing-song, high-pitched voice with elongated vowels and facial expressions encourages conversation. Fact or fiction? And that is, of course, fact. Parentese is that way of speaking to the child in correct English, but in that sort of slow, focused way, with your voice rising and falling as you communicate with the child in the way that we do normally talk. And you'll find the child talking back, attempting to talk back to you. It is safe to allow young children to see and use digital devices. Fact or fiction? And this, of course, is fiction. Digital devices should not be seen or used by young kids up to and even after the age of 18 months, 18 to 24 months across the world. That is now what's recommended. It doesn't aid development, it doesn't speed up growth. It actually can tend to confuse the brain and slow things down rather than accelerate. So no, at least not until 18 months. Listening to Mozart makes a baby smarter. Fact or fiction? This is fiction. Disney have had to refund parents who invested in their baby Einstein videos, because it's been shown that listening to Mozart may calm the child or soothe the child if he happens to like Mozart, but does nothing about encouraging brain growth. And lastly, creative guided play and motor finding gross movement support brain growth. Fact or fiction? And obviously that's fact. Any of that sort of interaction and not forgetting the movement of the body will encourage that massive dramatic growth that can take place in the child's brain at a very young stage. It either will or it won't. If he gets the encouragement and the correct environment, that brain will accelerate its growth. Last then, the genes may provide the blueprint, but early experiences shape the brain. Do not allow the genes to have the final word. So thank you very much for listening. Look out for some more of our videos, which will be on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you perhaps at our seminars in May and early June. Thank you.